Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says his party is making two big demands of the Trudeau government to help rein in inflation. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says more firefighters are on their way to help battle the wildfires which continue to rage across the country. And we hear from a pastor in Tennessee who explains why he and millions of other Americans are now boycotting the retail giant Target.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says his party is demanding the federal government act now to tackle the inflationary crisis it has caused. He says his party is putting forth a couple of big demands in the House of Commons.
Two demands that we will fight for, including by putting forward 900 amendments to the forthcoming Liberal budget debate. We are going to stop the budget unless they meet two conditions. Condition number one, we want a plan to balance the budget in order to bring down inflation and interest rates. Now, the government said that it could balance the budget in the year 2027. And that was only 6 months ago. And then they suddenly reversed themselves with $60 billion of inflationary deficits. The Minister of Finance admits deficits fuel inflation. She said so right before adding the extra $60 billion of inflation. That's $4,200 for every family in Canada.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says more help is coming to battle the wildfires across the country, including the hiring of more Indigenous firefighters. He says his government is there in our time of need.
So far, we've approved 3 requests for federal assistance in Alberta, in Nova Scotia, and in Quebec. This includes deploying Canadian Armed Forces members for things like personnel to aid in firefighting roles, airlift resources, and engineering support. Minister Blair will go into more detail about the status of this work in a moment on what we're doing to keep people safe right now. Year after year, with climate change, we're seeing more and more intense wildfires, and in places where they don't normally happen. That's why we've invested to train more community-based firefighters across the country. For example, we've worked with the Yukon First Nations Wildfire Partnership to train 130 wildland firefighters in Yukon and northern British Columbia. In Newfoundland and Labrador, we partnered with the Innu Nation to train community members. In Manitoba, in Ontario, and in many other places, our support allowed more firefighters to be trained. And last week, we announced that through the Wildfire Training Fund, we're supporting over 300 Indigenous firefighters and 125 Indigenous fire guardians to be hired and trained this season.
Government officials say fighting wildfires costs taxpayers an average of about $1 billion per year, but that figure doesn't include structural losses or the impact on human health. They say this wildfire season has been unprecedented.
This year, we are experiencing an unprecedented amount of fire for this early in the season. Second, the rate of increase of area burned is also high. You can see other years with very rapid rates of increase, including 2021, for example, but not this early in the year. If this rate continues, we could hit record levels for area burned this year. Third, this chart also shows that there is an overall trend for fire activity over the course of the fire season. Early spring fires, and then another increase in fires starting midsummer. Finally, you can see high variability in area burned and timing between years, and it is important to remember that the potential for large or damaging fire always exists, even during average fire seasons or under average conditions.
Residents who lost their homes in the wildfire in the northwestern suburbs of Halifax are being taken in to view their homes by city buses. Some others are waiting to visit on their own once the streets have reopened to the public.
Officially, I found out on, I guess, Sunday afternoon or Monday afternoon, whatever day it was. I don't know. Every day is the same. From a friend that sent me, or called me and told me and sent me pictures. But I had sneaky suspicion because I seen it on fire and videos prior to that, like I said, on social media. So I still had questions, but I had some answers at that point. It hurt. It definitely hurts.
Now, there was some good news for residents in the Halifax region, as fire officials say the wildfire in their area is now under control, thanks in large part to wetter weather. Residents are eager to return to their homes.
I would like to reiterate the fact that as we've had over 45 mils of rain in the last day and a half, and our fire crews out there are still picking up ash pits, smoke, and one even small area of open flame. So folks need to realize this does not mean this fire is over. We are going to have to continue to be vigilant, continue to monitor this situation.
I have the good fortune of still having my house stand. My house is, from what I've heard from others that have driven by my property, that my house is still there. And from visuals that people have shared from airplanes and satellite images, that my house is still there.
Well, we were here today because, like everyone else, we want to know the status of our house. And it is still standing, zero damage. It looks like the flames were about less than a kilometer from the house, about 3/4 of a kilometer.
Yes, praying for more rain in many provinces battling wildfires right now. For our region in southwestern Alberta, we saw a bit of moisture today. Jeanette Roche is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, we may even see more shower activity tonight?
Yeah, 60% chance of showers tonight and another 60% chance on a Tuesday. And overnight, we're still looking at those double digits into the evening. They're 12 degrees for an overnight low, up to 22 degrees for a high on Tuesday. So we're still above that average range for this time of year. So we're doing pretty well. Now, I will be back later in the show to let you know how the rest of the week is shaping up.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. A 14-year-old swimmer is believed to have been caught up in a current and swept downstream in the North Saskatchewan River on Sunday. Edmonton police say the boy was swimming with 3 others near Terwilliger Park when he was carried away by the water. Police are asking the public to keep watch for any possible sightings of the boy. Police and other emergency crews searched for the teenager until dark yesterday, setting up a command post across from the Edmonton Country Club just east of where the group was swimming. Now, one of the men who brought us the Winter Olympics in Calgary back in 1988 has died. Bob Niven, who was president of the bid committee, passed away on May 26th at the age of 80. He was vice chair of the organizing committee and served as mayor of the Olympic Village during the Games. Canada Olympic Park named its high-performance training facility in his honor. Niven's obituary states that he died from a rare progressive degenerative neurological disease that affects speech, motor skills, and balance. A pastor in Tennessee wrote a piece in the Washington Times explaining why he and millions of other Americans are now boycotting certain, quote, woke companies, including Target. Pastor Jack Mooring of Celebration of Life Church in Asheville joins us now from Franklin, Tennessee. So, Pastor Jack, what issues do you have with Target?
I actually joke in the article, I actually like shopping at Target. Our family spent a lot of time there over the years, and that's actually one of the reasons, we chose to boycott them, because our family has spent quite a lot of time there. We had built a lot of trust with the brand, and I think it's hard to understand how a lot of these things work, but I just think that they crossed the line. And the reason I wrote the article is because I believe that as a Christian, I have a moral responsibility to speak up about all the issues of life. And of course, I'm not just picking on this one particular issue. I as a pastor, I talk about a multiplicity of issues, right? Not just the LGBTQ conversation, but it is an important one, particularly personally for my family. And we felt like they had crossed the line too far, and we chose not to spend our money there anymore.
Now, what products specifically do you have a problem with that Target is marketing and selling?
Last year, it was chest binders for girls. This year, it was tuck-friendly bathing suits for men, which of course adolescents would have access to in the smaller sizes. And there was even pride onesies for babies. And so I think it's this pushing of an inherently sexual message, which the pride movement is inherently sexual to its core, pushing that on with a brand that is particularly for families. Families spend a lot of time in there. And so once again, it was a collection. It wasn't one particular product.
Now, recent reports say Target has lost $12 billion in just 14 days as the retail giant's market cap plummeted. Is it just a coincidence, or do you think maybe your message is getting through?
I think it is. And that was, as a conservative and as a Christian conservative in particular, it's hard to keep my money from going to companies I disagree with. I mean, unless I just went to live in a field somewhere, But I think there is an appropriate time for strategic boycotts, and I think this is what this was, particularly to send message to other corporations who have influence with families to say, listen, don't push this on our children.
Thanks so much for your time, Pastor Jack. That was Jack Mooring joining us from Franklin, Tennessee. By the way, Bridge City News reached out to the Media Relations Department at Target, but have yet to hear back. Now, those who work with members of the LGBTQ2+ community say items like what Target is selling are very important, especially when it comes to supporting someone's mental health.
Specifically for those who have dysphoria, clothing is only made for a very specific body. So when you have something like a bathing suit, which in and of itself is very revealing and very identifying, especially around that part of your body, having a piece of clothing that you can wear and not have to worry about people seeing things that might cause them to have a reaction, such as they're having a reaction to the product itself, is incredibly valuable for mental health, to being able to go to a beach or going to a public pool and feel comfortable and safe. Not being able to wear one on a social level means that when they're out in society interacting with spaces, they're more likely to be misgendered.
Federal Tourism Minister Randy Boissonnault says the federal government will spend up to $1.5 million in funding to increase security at Pride events, which kicked off this month across Canada.
We have to keep people safe. Canada is a country that leads in the world in terms of 2S LGBTQI+ rights and our government's defense of those rights. Now, here's an interesting piece for folks in the room. 10% of the world's prides take place in Canada. 10%. We're a smaller percentage of the global population and a small population, but mighty, of the economic part of the country, of the world, but 10% of the world's prides take place on Canadian soil. And they're a big draw for people from one part of the country to go to the other part of the country. I know folks, including my own partner David, are like, we're going to Toronto Pride. Whether you're coming or not, I'm going to be there, because he wants to go and see his people. And we want to go and do that together. And so it is for people from around the world.
An Airdrie, Alberta man has been charged with assault and other offences in connection with an incident that resulted in a search at Henderson Lake last week. Lethbridge police say they responded to a call around 7 in the morning last Friday of an assault along the 600 block of Mayor McGrath Drive South. It was reported that a victim who confronted a man who attacked him with a baton. The suspect then fled the scene, where he disposed of the items, including the baton and a pellet gun, in the lake. Police say they also seized ammunition and suspected fentanyl. 36-year-old Andrew Albert Watson faces a number of charges, including assault with a weapon, possession of a controlled substance, and resisting a peace officer. He was scheduled to appear in court on Monday. Environment Week in Lethbridge has kicked off, and the city is inviting locals to take part in their Climate Adaptation Strategy and Action Plan survey. Now, the survey will help officials figure out how they can better weatherproof their assets and services in the event of extreme weather and when it hits.
So it is timely because of the extreme weather events that are happening in Alberta, and we want to ensure that the city of Lethbridge is also prepared to adapt to these changing climate events. An example of an adaptation action that may be included in the plan might be preparing our park spaces for the changing climate. So whether that be increasing our tree diversity or naturalizing park spaces for drought-resisting species, that would be an example of an action that may be included in the plan.
I think we're all well aware of changes we're seeing, whether it's wildfires, whether it's snowstorms in September that leave us with 2 feet of snow, all of these sudden weather events, and for lots of reasons we really need to be prepared as a community, and not just from an environmental perspective, but from an economic perspective, from a personal safety perspective. And so it's really exciting that the city's climate adaptation plan is going to bring all of those pieces together and really come forward with a strategy that we can use as a community.
Now, to mark Environment Week, there will be lots of events going on for people to take part in, and all of the details can be found on the City of Lethbridge's website. Members of the Lethbridge Sport Council, Tourism Lethbridge, and the NMAC Centre are headed out to Richmond, British Columbia for the Sport Events Congress. The initiative is meant to help promote Lethbridge as a hosting city for future sporting events, along with making connections with event rights holders. In 2022, Lethbridge hosted the Tim Hortons Briar, which generated more than $16.8 million in economic activity for our city. Tanya Whipple, the communication manager for the Lethbridge Sport Council, said hosting these events in the city helps tick off two major items on their organization's checklist.
So the bringing sport tourism events is great for not only the economic impact that it brings to the city. So large profile events like the Briar. I mean, we know those bring a lot of economic impact. But even some of the smaller events, not our provincial events that some of our organizations hold, those bring in huge crowds. So, I mean, anywhere, 400 to 700 people might come for, an event at the Cavendish Farms Ice Center or something like that. And they fill up all the hotel rooms in town, and those people eat at our restaurants and they shop at our stores. But it's more than just the economic impact. There's also a sport development benefit to hosting those events. Hosting those large events always causes a little bit of a buzz around that sport, which helps those organizations that are hosting and that provide that sport in our community, that opportunity to kind of get out there a little bit more and bring in some more participants.
The Sport Events Congress will run from June 6th through the 8th and will bring together more than 400 national and provincial sport industry professionals together. A total of 40 local exhibitors came out this past weekend in Lethbridge to help promote SportFest. Organizers told us the event provides an interactive way for sport fanatics to learn about the programs and services that these groups provide to many members of our community.
Our main goal with SportFest is for it to be an opportunity for the people who are looking for a new sport to try or a different sport to get connected with the sport organizations. And we saw a lot of that happening this year. Lots of our exhibitors made the comment that the people who were coming by had lots of great questions, and they were really, asking questions, looking for opportunities. And we heard from several of the attendees that, we found something or we, made this connection. So that's really great to hear that.
Staff say one of the main attractions this year was pickleball, as Lethbridge has seen a rise in the number of people wanting to take a shot at the sport. Yours truly included. Lethbridge is ranked number 13 out of 20 spots among the best small cities in which to get rich. That's according to financial website YourOyster.com. The results were made based on stats that include median household income after taxes, monthly cost of living, and GDP per capita. Trevor Lewington with Economic Development Lethbridge said there are a few main economic indicators on why he believes our city hit number 13 on the list.
Part of what the report spoke to is the relative strength of Lethbridge's economy, that it is possible to do quite well in this community. We have historically some of the lowest unemployment in the province, so job prospects here are very consistent. There's lots of opportunity here. And as it talked about affordability, we know that average house prices, for example, here are sometimes 30 or 40% less than a Calgary or an Edmonton. I think that's significant. And overall, cost of living in Lethbridge is reported to be better than some of those other major centers. So the report, it's nice to see Lethbridge included. I think it's great that they've called out the fact that you can have a decent quality of life here for less. And so that means more money in your pocket and therefore, in their definition, an opportunity to, quote, get rich.
The top two cities on the list were Oakville and Burlington, Ontario. And third spot went to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Summer travel is on a lot of people's minds. Now, if you live in southern Alberta, you don't have very far to go to see some incredible sights. Lethbridge has several UNESCO World Heritage sites that are a short driving distance away. Now, we caught up with Erin Crane of Lethbridge Tourism, who gave us some sweet examples.
And I don't know if everyone is aware, but Alberta has 6 UNESCO World Heritage sites, and 4 of them are within driving distance of Lethbridge. It's huge. And, I will say that they are pretty full all summer long. So if you're a resident and you want to go and explore, do it in those shoulder seasons. You're going to have way less traffic, and they are very appreciative of, spreading out kind of that year-round destination.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Erin Crane of Lethbridge Tourism and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our program. Well, we had sunshine mixed with clouds earlier today and even some light showers in some regions of southwestern Alberta. More moisture may be on the way. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. We had sunshine mixed with clouds today and some light showers in parts of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is now with a full look at the weather picture. Jeanette, the moisture may be sticking around for a little time?
Yeah, well, we are certainly seeing those intermittent showers throughout the week. We are looking at another 60% chance this evening. Same thing for Tuesday. High of 22, up to 27, though, for both Wednesday and Thursday. We're seeing mainly sunny skies on those 2 nights. They're going to be nice and warm. As we get into Thursday night, though, that's when we see those showers return and mainly rainy skies for Friday and into Friday night as well. Looking at a high of 23 on Friday, 28 on Saturday. And look at that on Sunday, all the way up to 29 degrees. So going to be a very hot weekend ahead of us. Average high for this time of year, 21. Average low, 7 degrees, 32. That was our high temperature on this day, but that happened back in 1961. And in 1943, we were sitting at 0, which is very chilly for June, I would say. Sun rose this morning at 5:26. We're looking at a sunset this evening at 9:34. 16 hours and 8 minutes of daylight is what we're seeing now. Okay, very sunny on the west coast for tomorrow. High of 25 degrees in Victoria. 20, though, the closer you are to the water. 24 in Vancouver, but move inland, and you're looking at very high humidex and high temperatures as well, more like 30 degrees. Sunshine in Edmonton tomorrow, high of 23 degrees and a high of 22 expected in Calgary, also with mainly sunny skies. Now, as we get into the prairies here, looking at a chance of showers in Saskatoon, risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow, 24 for a high. There's a heat warning in effect for both Regina and Winnipeg over the next 3 days. That humidex is supposed to hit 38. So we're looking at highs of 32 and 31 tomorrow in Regina and Winnipeg. Winnipeg could also see a risk of a thunderstorm, probably from all that humidity that is accumulating. As we look to the central part of the country, we are seeing very poor air quality, and it is due to those forest fires happening in Quebec. So 24 for a high in Toronto, expecting sunshine, but hazy conditions. To Ottawa, poor air quality there as well, but it could be helped by some of that rain they're expecting tomorrow. High of 21 degrees, 20 for a high in Montreal, also looking at risk of thunderstorms tomorrow. And those air pollutants also a factor in Montreal there due to those Quebec wildfires. Fredericton looking at 10 to 15 millimeters of rain, high of 12 degrees, 13 for a high in Halifax, same thing, 10 to 15 millimeters, 10 to 20 millimeters of rain in Charlottetown, high of 12 degrees there, and 8 degrees in St. John's, and only expecting 2 to 4 millimeters of rain there. It's going to be a very rainy, wet Tuesday on the East Coast tomorrow. There you have it. That is your forecast.
The Bank of Canada will announce its next interest rate decision this week. Although there is speculation the central bank may raise rates again on Wednesday, economists don't expect the bank to pull the trigger. They say the bank will likely want more time to assess the state of the economy and signal the rate hike to financial markets. Economists say that a rate hike is in the realm of possibility later this summer. Flair Airlines had the highest number of complaints per 100 flights of all of the major airlines in Canada. That's according to the Canadian Transportation Agency, which says between April 1st of last year and March 31st of this year, Flair saw an average of 15.3 complaints per 100 flights. Sunwing Airlines came in second at 13.8 complaints per 100 flights, and Swoop was third at 13.2. It comes as airlines have had a rocky recovery year with delayed and canceled flights. General Motors says it is investing more than $1 billion in 2 Michigan plants for the production of next-generation internal combustion engine heavy-duty trucks. Now, the company says it will build internal combustion vehicles throughout this decade, along with making electric vehicles. General Motors says it has a goal of building only electric passenger vehicles by the year 2035. The Detroit automaker reported a 38% year-over-year increase in heavy-duty pickup truck sales last year, with nearly 288,000 trucks sold. There's word coming out of Saudi Arabia that it will be slashing oil supplies, which means much higher gas prices for many of us here in North America. One of our regular contributors, Lisa Daftari from the Foreign Desk, says this will hurt a lot of people.
And now we'll see, of course, a hike at the pump again with this news that Saudi Arabia will be cutting supply. Of course, Joe Biden's administration has not been obviously in favor of bringing it home domestically to have our own reserves, to use our own reserves. So unfortunately, we will have to be playing along with the global response, which will, of course, be a rise in prices. And I know that will trickle into Canada as well. And you will unfortunately deal with the consequences in the same way.
Yes, when the U.S. sneezes, we definitely catch a cold here in Canada. Make sure you catch the full interview with our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 93 points on the day to finish at 19,931. The Dow was down 199 points to 33,562. The S&P 500 was down 8 on the day to 4273, and the Nasdaq was down 11 points to 13,229. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 23 cents to 71.97 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 10 cents to 227 US. Gold was even on the day at 1961.86 US an ounce, and silver was also even at 23.55 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.16 per bushel, barley's at $8.90, canola's at $14.97, and corn is at $10.29 per bushel. Live cattle were up 73 cents to $175.15. Feeder cattle August contract was up 70 cents to $242.60, and lean hogs were down $1.40 to $85.33. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.36 US. Recapping one of our top stories, a 14-year-old swimmer is believed to have been caught in a current and swept downstream in the North Saskatchewan River on Sunday. Edmonton police say the boy was swimming with 3 others near Terwilliger Park when he was carried away by the water. Police are asking for public assistance to keep watch for any possible sightings of the boy. The war in Sudan continues as the military and paramilitary rapid support forces continue to battle it out for the northeastern African nation. Now, both the United States and Saudi Arabia are demanding a ceasefire. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will share details with us momentarily. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. The Norbridge Senior Center is hosting a number of Seniors Week events, including a toonie pancake breakfast on Tuesday, afternoon bingo on Friday, and a Friday evening jam session. The center is also hosting their inaugural Father's Day Show and Shine barbecue on Sunday, June 18th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the parking lot of 1904 13th Avenue North. All proceeds will go to support the Norbridge Senior Center's recreation programs. For more information, visit norbridgeseniors.com. Go back in time and see what it was like to live as a pioneer. Coyote Flats Pioneer Village is a Western heritage museum located 1.5 kilometers south of Pitcher Butte. Walk through the village and see a railway station, post office, fire hall, school, and so much more. The museum is open daily from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with admission of $10 for adults or $20 per family. For more information, visit coyoteflats.org. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
According to recent reports, there's a real nuclear threat by Iran. A number of Western nations are pushing to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement once again. Now, to chat about this in more detail is U.S. political reporter and the host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, will a new agreement be struck, and will it truly make any difference? Or will the regime keep doing what it's doing when it comes to nuclear capabilities?
Right, and the two are not mutually exclusive, unfortunately. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? So we thought that the United States took some distance from the nuclear deal because of everything going on, right? So let's line up the evidence here. You have the Iran regime cracking down on peaceful protesters. You've had the highest number of executions that we've had in a very long time in just the last month. I mean, they're maiming, they're raping, they're killing peaceful protesters, young men and women who are just coming out onto the streets fighting for freedom. You have the Iranian regime doubling down and really dedicating itself to going after U.S. Troops in Syria. You have them not cooperating with the IAEA in terms of transparency with their nuclear program. And every day we have a different report. They're a week away, they're 2 months away, they're 3 months away. They may already have the nuclear bomb, but on the other hand, you have the United States. We just found out through leaked documents that they have been meeting secretly with diplomatic members of Iran's regime to try to get some sort of deal. They went to Oman to try to get a deal. They talked to them on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in last year and previous years. So they are hell-bent on getting back into a deal, despite the fact that the Iran regime has shown such bad behavior, both at home and in the region. So, that it doesn't show a good sign of strength to Iran's regime when they are getting away with literally murder and able to get a deal and to loosen billions of dollars that will push them right back into doing everything that they're doing, supporting terrorism in the region, supporting terrorism at home, the executions, etc.
Lisa, 3 Europeans returned home over the weekend after being released by Iran in a prisoner swap. Tehran said there was no reason for Europeans to be arrested if they were not exploited by foreign security services.
The reason that they are arrested is because of prisoner swaps like this. Who did they get out of jail? A guy who was found convicted on trying to set off a bomb in France. Of course, the bomb plot was foiled, but 2 Austrians and a Dane were held inside Iran's prisons and were released over the weekend in exchange for this terrorist. This is exactly why they collect these pawns. They use them as political weapons. And of course, the Europeans, and I know the United States has done so in the past, well, we have to negotiate because we want to get these people out. But there's a reason why the United States always kept this. We do not negotiate with terrorists to prevent situations like this, or to prevent this feeling on behalf of the Iran regime that they can do this. But nonetheless, we do have Americans being held in Iran's prisons. We do have Europeans. We have others. They have a whole slew of them. And that's the way they're going to get their terrorists out of prison in different countries as well.
Sadly, 3 Israeli soldiers were killed over the weekend in a terrorist incident along the Egyptian border, Lisa. Now, one of the soldiers died after exchanging gunfire with an Egyptian police officer?
Yeah, so these 2 young, and they're so young, and it's horrific when you see their pictures, but the 2 were killed. Then the IDF responded, and when they got to the scene, there was gunfire, and a 3rd was killed in that way. Look, there's never a day of peace, or never a day when these young soldiers who are 18, 19, 20 years old can let their hair down, can relax, can take a sigh of relief. They cannot let their guards down. And of course, something like this happens when a teenager is just assigned to be on the Egyptian border, and of course lose their lives in this senseless tragedy.
Yeah, very sad. There's word coming from Saudi Arabia that it will be slashing oil supply, which will mean much higher gas prices for many of us here in North America, and poor timing as well, with so many of us planning road trips this summer.
Exactly, and that's why the news comes as bad news today. Here in the United States, everyone's talking about how summer vacations may be put on hold because gas prices were already high. People dealing with inflation of all sorts in terms of going to the supermarket and the cost of ordinary things, and of course gasoline being one of those things. And now we'll see, of course, a hike at the pump again with this news that Saudi Arabia will be cutting supply. Of course, Joe Biden's administration has not been obviously in favor of bringing it home domestically, to have our own reserves, to use our own reserves. So unfortunately, we will have to be playing along with the global response, which will, of course, be a rise in prices. And I know that will trickle into Canada as well. And you will, unfortunately, deal with the consequences in the same way.
Lisa, the war in Sudan continues. The northeastern African nation descended into chaos after fighting broke out in mid-April between the military and paramilitary rapid support forces. Both the United States and Saudi Arabia say, you know what, it's time for a new ceasefire here.
Yeah, they can say that as many times as they'd like, and they've said it multiple times, but unfortunately how the ceasefires have not stuck. They continue going back to fighting. Look, you're looking at basically 2 rebel groups who both want the future of that country. And it's almost like in their eyes up for grabs, right? So these 2 armies were supposed to actually merge and work together. And here you have greed, egos, so many wonderful ingredients that make for this awful, crisis and civil war. So unfortunately, so many casualties, so many people who are being affected by this. And of course, we don't see any end in sight. The international community getting involved, trying to broker a ceasefire, but to no avail so far.
China's defense minister defended sailing a warship across the path of an American destroyer and a Canadian frigate cruising the Taiwan Strait, saying it was in retaliation to so-called freedom of navigation patrols that are a so-called provocation to China.
Yes, trickle, trickle, trickle. Any day now, we're going to see, it looks like China not only moving closer to invading Taiwan, but actually doing so. And each one of these scenarios, they're almost testing the waters, literally and figuratively in this case, getting closer and closer to what they will call an invasion of Taiwan and what they will defend as their right. This is what they have been doing for years, is defining their right, quote unquote, right, I should say, and trying to basically just partition off parts of the seas, parts of Taiwan. The nations of that region are, of course, worried. They've come to the United States. They've held meetings. I'm talking about South Korea. We're talking about Vietnam, even Japan, all worried about how this will go. The Philippines as well. But of course, China marches on. This is a plan that has been in the works for many years, and now we are watching it inch forward into implementation.
Does the U.S. military really have many resources left after giving so much to Ukraine in its war with Russia in order to help defend Taiwan against Chinese aggression?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there were reports late last year talking about how we are very much spread thin. That we're talking about military production, right? So because we use so much of our military resources to fund and fuel Ukraine, there's not much left for Taiwan. But from what I'm hearing from my sources, they have doubled down on the intention of helping Taiwan, and they know that it's very close on the horizon, so they will try to replenish. There are a lot of lawmakers calling for a preemptive giving resources to Taiwan preemptively in order to prepare and to perhaps and hopefully deter China from moving forward.
That must be a real challenge for the United States and the Biden administration right now, having to look at itself as being a world police force, so to speak, and it must be really challenging. I mean, financially and just, maybe having to tap into NATO forces as well and having more countries join forces, because the United States is still a powerhouse, but it can't do it alone.
It's true. But you know how I think the frustration with many of us covering foreign policy right now is that it's like a pick and choose buffet of foreign policy issues and how the Biden administration sees them, right? So look at our own southern border. Probably our biggest national security issue right now is our southern border, and it's being ignored. Just yesterday, our Border Patrol, head of Border Patrol resigned. The Border Patrol agents were celebrating. I mean, imagine how incompetent this individual is. Obviously, Mayorkas, another incompetent individual, people have called for him to resign. We have a crisis at our border, and it's not being taken care of. We look at the Iran regime that is marching on. I mean, the brutality, the billions that they're putting into global terror, the fact that we can stop this by moving away and sanctioning Iran's regime, by putting pressure on the regime and supporting the freedom protesters. But instead, we're choosing to give them billions, give them their frozen assets, and to strike a deal with them. So it's really pick and choose. And Ukraine, well, a lot of people believe, look, nobody wants Russia to invade Ukraine. Nobody wants a war there. And really everyone feels bad for the people there. And we wish that we could stop this war. But a lot of people think that there has been a disproportionate amount of money and funds and military aid given to Ukraine, given the fact that they will not be able to defeat Russia in this endeavor. So what are we putting money into is the question. Now, given that point, are we now spread so thin that we can't help Taiwan? An actual, something that we're more invested in terms of stopping China from marching forward with its hegemonic aspirations. So I think, it's interesting to look at the United States as the world's police, but they have not been consistent in that being their foreign policy strategy. We're seeing more of a splotchy strategy, maybe a lack of strategy, where the Biden administration picks and chooses where it wants to spend its assets, where it wants to focus on, and what side it wants to take.
Let's focus on TikTok for just a moment right now. Lisa, it's very popular with a lot of young people. Millions of TikTok videos all over the world here. Now, Ottawa is having federal employees take TikTok off of their government telephones, and now European Parliament is urging member nations to adopt a TikTok ban. Can you explain?
Yeah, well, look, the TikTok issue is almost a little too little, too late because so many people have it. It is so popular. People rely on it for their income. I mean, for their livelihoods, which is insane. But it is so popular that it will be very hard to contain. Now, there are states here in the United States as well that are trying to ban. They've already taken it off of government employee phones, trying to at least curtail it to the extent that they can. European nations trying to do the same. Why is it that they've only noticed now what a threat this app is after allowing it to get so popular, allowing them to have access to all of our personal information? I thank God do not have TikTok for that reason, but we have enough social media. We do not need this app that will give access to the Chinese. And now it's like, flowers of feathers in the wind. Try to collect all of this and try to, contain it. I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult to get all European nations, the Canadians, the Americans, everyone on board to get this app off of their phones.
Yeah, it'd be a real challenge, absolutely. She's our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.
Well, with spring and summer just around the corner come opportunities for travel and tourism. But many of us don't always think about touring our own backyard. There's a lot to see and do right here in southern Alberta. For instance, did you know that Lethbridge has 200 kilometers of trails in its rugged coulees? Yeah, it's also just over an hour from the Rockies, the Badlands, and a day trip to 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So to talk more about all the tourism opportunities of Lethbridge, I am joined today by Erin Crane, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Lethbridge Tourism. Erin, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on.
Thank you, Jeanette. Yes, that is my role here at Tourism Lethbridge.
Okay, so Erin, maybe start off by talking a bit more about these miles and miles of trails in the Lethbridge, not to mention the World Heritage Sites. I, for one, didn't even realize we were that close to so many until I started doing some research. So
we have so many little hidden gems here in our community. And we hear that again and again from travelers that come that, they're like, oh, we had no idea. Oh, we had no idea. And this is the opportunity for us. We have so much. We just need to get the word out about them. So the river valley and all of the nature and adventure things that we offer, they're a huge draw for everyone in Alberta, everyone in Canada, and even beyond. So things like our trails, the biking network that we have is amazing. You had mentioned the hub for the 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And I don't know if everyone is aware, but Alberta has 6 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and 4 of them are within driving distance of Lethbridge.
Okay.
Huge.
So what are they, Erin?
Oh, easy. Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. Amazing if you haven't been. And again, we hear this over and over again, especially from residents that, oh, I think the last time I was there was in the 5th grade when I went with my school class, right? If you haven't been to these places, go, because they change over time and they're so unique and so special. The other is Riding on Stone Provincial Park. Became a UNESCO World Heritage Site a few years ago.
Amazing. It's gorgeous for anyone who hasn't been there.
Oh, yeah. And, I will say that they are pretty full all summer long. So if you're a resident and you want to go and explore, do it in those shoulder seasons. You're going to have way less traffic, and they are very appreciative of, spreading out kind of that year-round destination. And same, Waterton National Park. It is the Peace Park between the United States and Canada. And one of the things that makes Alberta very special and is a big attractor, especially for those international markets, is Dinosaur Provincial Park. And many people, they always think of Drumheller, but the provincial park actually starts down near the Brooks area and then runs all the way up the province. So we get a lot of people exploring, again, because they can get some really good experiences in kind of that less less busy atmosphere.
I had no idea. See, I'm learning so much from you. I had no idea that the dinosaurs started that close. I know I'm a huge hiker. I love our coolies. I didn't quite know how much hiking there was or what all there was to do around here. I'm going to have to get out more often. So, Erin, if someone in the area maybe doesn't have a lot of funds, maybe not a huge budget for travel this summer, talk about some of the stuff that they can check out and do on the weekends, maybe closer to home.
Our community is fantastic for this stuff, Jeanette. You know, there are so many amazing organizations that are putting on events that draw in visitors from out of town, but are really designed to keep the residents happy and to welcome them in and to find out about more of these things. Things like dragon boat races, street wheelers, the air shows, all of the arts and cultural events, like over at Southern Alberta Ethnic Association. There is so much to get involved in, and so many that are free and open to the public. Don't get me wrong, there are a few that will charge an entrance or may have kind of layers to them. You can do this for free, but if you want to come to the dinner or see the show, there's a cost for that. But more and more, and especially those events that are supported by the City of Lethbridge through their funding programs, that's a big part of it, is making it so that everyone in our community can get involved and to get out and connect with each other and build that social capacity that makes Lethbridge so special.
And there's a rich Indigenous culture here too, isn't there?
There is, and that is becoming more and more popular, not only because we see the opportunities and the ability to tell great stories, and our Indigenous partners are the best storytellers that there are. We're actually working with some partners with the Reconciliation Committee here in Lethbridge on an Indigenous filmmaker series to learn more about those stories and have them tell them themselves, which is really exciting. But for the international travelers and for those who come, from around, Canada, and especially those urban people that we get coming in, these are things that they don't quite understand, and we need to tell them about, and we need to educate them because it is so important to everything we do.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lethbridge is positioned well for that transportation corridors around us. So are there some events or factors that we can attribute to draw to Lethbridge? I know that we have a wide reach when it comes to tourists from other provinces and even the States.
Yeah, our location is ideal. Right. And even with our partners at Travel Alberta and even with Destination Canada, right, being located where we are, we're the first stop when many travelers from the South come into Canada. Right. So we get a lot of those people looking for the Alaska Highway that are on their way up. And this gives us the opportunity to welcome them here, find out a little bit about them, and encourage them to spend more money here in our region before they head on to someplace else, but to also kind of point out some of those other unique areas where they could be. So we are definitely a big player in that ecosystem of looking at those high value U.S. travelers.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, you mentioned it. Every dollar does count, of course. So can you share with us the importance of tourism to our local economy?
Gosh, this is a good conversation to have, and it's one that we have been trying to have more and more. We were up at the Tourism Industry Association of Alberta's Advocacy Summit last month. And it was reiterated over and over again about how important tourism is to municipalities and communities. We are a sector of multiple industries. Tourism touches a little bit of everything. We work in agriculture, we work in supply chain, we work in alternative energy. There's always a tourism component to it. And this is one of the things that we have been doing more and more here at Tourism Lethbridge, is tracking that economic impact.
Oh, good. Would you maybe have some numbers or figures for the impact that tourism has on like city businesses each year, for example?
Yeah. So again, we're just getting started with this information. The estimated economic impact numbers of events in our community, which is over 57 million. And that is a huge number. And again, we can attribute some of that to major events that we held in 2022, like the Tim Hortons Brier and the Alberta Treaty Hockey Provincials, right? Those came on at a time when our tourism businesses needed it most. They had been decimated by the global pandemic. And all through 2020 and 2021, those businesses struggled. So it was really nice to see this emergence of tourism once again in 2022. And while we saw some really good numbers, we know that we still have a long way to go and that a lot of those businesses are still recovering and still need our help. So that's exactly what we're doing. How do we let the world know about the opportunities here in Lethbridge and bring in more visitors?
Yeah, 100%. So how would you recommend that small businesses in our city tap into that tourism opportunity?
You know, the best thing to do is to get in touch. We have been doing a lot of advertising lately about, fantastic organizations that are hosting these events. We highlighted the curling club locally because it's their work that actually brought in the Tim Hortons Brier. We didn't do it. The city of Lethbridge didn't do it. It took a local organizing committee, passion and time and dedication that actually brought that in and made it the success that it was. And we need more in our community to think about doing that. If you sit on a provincial board or a national board, could we host your conference here? Are you involved in a sporting organization? Could we look at hosting a provincial or a national tournament here? And we're here to help, right? We need you, we need the community to step forward and plant those ideas, but we're here to help. And so let's do it together. Reach out, connect with us. We'd love to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned conferences there, and for sure that's a big thing. What we didn't mention was trade shows. So what's the expectation that the new trade center could bring to the area?
We have a real opportunity with the opening of the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. We bring in a lot of people from Alberta, and actually Alberta was one of the best for having people move around and explore within their own province during the pandemic. But what the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center allows us to do is to really open up to national and international markets that we never had access to before. Right? We couldn't go and we couldn't talk, even have conversations with people because they were looking at, hosting thousands of people. Now we can, and we have the real opportunity to, especially connect with those agricultural events that happen so often. And a lot of it, we're attending and we're talking about how great Lethbridge is. Now we get to open the door and we get to invite those people here to our community and to our region to find out exactly how spectacular we are and what are all of the opportunities, right? Is that opening your own business? Is that maybe coming here now that you've been as a visitor, you want to come back because you see the job opportunities and you think it's a great community and offers the quality of life you're looking for. So these are the opportunities that tourism opens the door for.
Wow. Okay. And so we were talking about the Agri-Food Hub, which is, of course, Lethbridge and District exhibition now, I think. Can you talk a bit about the impact that the Ag and Seed Expos have on our city? And what about my favorite, of course, is Home and Garden Show? We didn't get to have it this year. Did you feel its absence?
We always feel the absence. And, I think these are things that we're working on is, how do we maintain events? How do we maximize events? And again, bring the community in more or, bring more people to town. So, we always look at that. And, there are so many fantastic industries here in Lethbridge. Agriculture does play a big part in that. It's 20% of our GDP, and that's just primary agriculture. Everything kind of layers on top of that. So looking at those opportunities like alternative energy, that's a perfect, tie-in to the agriculture. And another thing that really makes Lethbridge stand out as special, because not many communities or destinations can offer the things that we offer. So again, we have real opportunities.
Yeah, I think we're sitting, smack dab in the middle of Canada's premier food corridor, too.
Yes, that's a huge opportunity, right? We continually talk about Canada's premier food corridor and what happens in this region that doesn't necessarily happen anywhere else in Canada. So this is our unique selling proposition that we can go out and we can maximize.
Yeah, 100%. So looking forward to the summer season here in 2023. What's the biggest draw? I know Whoop Up Days, of course, is huge, the end of August. What else is happening this summer?
Yeah, well, again, we have a great lineup. The Dragon boats are, getting ready to hit the ground running in July. We always have Pride Weekend, which brings in tons of people from around Alberta and the region, and even into BC and Saskatchewan, which is really nice. And that's what we want to do. So if you're holding an event, reach out. Let's figure out how we can maximize it, how we can, promote it into other markets to bring some more visitors into our community.
Erin, thanks so much for being with us today. We all look forward to a great summer of short road trips in southern Alberta and touring around Lethbridge.
Yeah, thank you, Jeanette. It was a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Erin Crane is the Chief Executive Officer of Lethbridge Tourism. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.